So my hope is that the members of the public that come, they take away a different perception of what a modern farm is like. They see that farmers actually do work hand in hand with nature and are doing a lot to improve the environment and improve nature. And I hope that the farmers that are in attendance or people who work in the farming industry will recognise a lot of the things on my farm in their own farm and maybe feel a bit better going home that, they feel a bit better about what they're doing on their farm. Everyone just has a little bit more positivity about farming and the impact farming has on the environment.
Irish agriculture is dominated by grass-based systems, mostly milk and beef, so farmers with other enterprises can struggle to get their stories heard. Good news is rare, so when there is a positive tillage story, we should spread it far and wide. You're listening to the latest episode of the Tillage Edge with me, Michael Hennessy. If you're enjoying the series, we'd appreciate it if you could follow the podcast and leave a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. One of the positive news stories within the farming community is Don Summers, a tillage farmer from Wexford and the overall winner of the Environmental Sustainability Awards in 2025. I'm delighted today to be joined by Don and his advisor John Mahon to chat about Don's farm and the opening evening he's going to host next week. Don, before we go any further, you might just remind listeners about the event and the details that people need to know for the day.
The farm walk is taking place next Wednesday, the 17th of June at 6:30 p.m. on my farm in Oilgate. If anyone's coming along, if they put the air code Y21TR80 into Google Maps, that air code's for the farmyard, but by the time they get close enough, they'll see all the signs up, they'll know where to go, there'll be plenty of signs and choggle staffs to direct them into the parking. So there should be lots to see on the day. Lots for farmers and lots for non-farmers as well. So we'll have a demonstration of a sprayer doing spot spraying weeds in a grass field. We'll have stands on the biodiversity that can be seen on a typical tillage farm. We'll have a bit on soil health, and there'll be a big part on water quality and the measures that we're doing the farm for that. And there'll also be a section on the greenhouse gas emissions that come from tillage and how they're probably lower than a lot of people actually think they are.
Okay, so it's a day done or an evening done where it's maybe not right into the nitty gritty of all the science as regards farming. It's more aimed at the general public, is it, for the most part? But tillage farmers might also get something out of it as well.
Yeah, I'd like to think there'll be something there for both groups, whether they're farmers or non-farmers. There will be things to be seen for farmers, but it won't be too heavy on detail. But my hope is that, the non-farmers, the general public and the families will take away maybe a different view of how an Irish farm or an Irish tillage farm works, how it might be quite different to the perception that's out there of what a commercial tillage farm is like.
Okay. And I suppose with that, there'll be a bit of walking involved. People will be going down around your farm a little bit. Bit mixed around the country, but how are your crops looking at the moment anyway? In terms of they're looking pretty good anyway? Happy enough with them?
For the most part, yes, I'm very happy. We have predominantly winter crops. Winter barley looks quite good. Winter rye looks good. Winter oilseed rape looks very good. The only kind of fly in the ointment is our winter wheat this year, which established very well. But has got a very bad, there's a lot of BYDV in it this year, which was kind of unexpected. It's not something we've had an issue with in wheat before, other than very small local infection in the crop.
Okay.
But this year it seems to be widespread throughout all our winter wheat. And I suppose we won't know until harvest how big an impact that'll have on yield, but it's very much a surprise this year and seems to be quite common with a lot of my neighbours and other farmers in this area that I'm talking to.
I know as I was talking to you before when you won this environmental award, it was a pretty special day, I think, in your farming career so far. Hopefully there's many more good days to come. But in terms of that, I know you're farming in a very sustainable way, but has it further influenced you in terms of maybe doing some more things planned?
To be honest, I would like to think it hasn't changed how I farm on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I've always had that focus on sustainability, but environmental sustainability that doesn't come at the cost of financial sustainability. But what I do think it has changed is it has given me the opportunity to share my experiences and share the good things that farmers are doing beyond other farmers, and that's probably suppose why we're looking at the farm walk being aimed towards the public as much as farmers. Most farmers know the good things that they and other farmers are doing on their farm, but it has given me an opportunity to share that message beyond farming and farmers and, share that with the general public and just get that positive message out there that, commercial farming is not necessarily bad for the environment, that environmental sustainability and um, economically sustainable farming can go hand in hand.
Okay. And in fairness, I think you're doing a great job in terms of communicating that message. John, I just want to bring you in here for the minute. John, in terms of, and Don said it already there, that there'll be a bit of a mixture of messaging and talks that are aimed at both farmers and non-farming visitors. Does that include the younger folk as well, children? And will they have, I suppose, will their interest be held, I suppose, throughout the entire walk?
Yeah, I suppose, Michael, look, we're hosting this in partnership with FBD on account of the Environmental Sustainability Awards. And I suppose the team is focused on sustainable tillage farming, but we have put an awful lot of work into this event to try and appeal to both the farming and non-farming audience and also the younger audience. Um, we've put a lot of emphasis on simplifying the messages that we're going to do at the key stops that Don has already spoken about. Um, but again, with the younger community, we're literally hoping to showcase Don's actions as a tillage farmer and how it ties in with the environment. Um, I suppose just on that point in the planning, all of our presentations they're going to be very short and simple. We've display boards with simple graphics to display what we're trying to get across in the messages. There's a short handout at the start of the event. Um, but we're trying to have visual demonstrations or participation from the younger members of the audience. Now, not to give too much away, but there will be involvement from the younger audience along some of the stops along the way. So
Okay.
we're looking forward to having them involved.
Brilliant, brilliant. And John, it's an outdoor event primarily, so obviously we were hoping for a nice evening, and hopefully it'll be better maybe than the last week that's out there. But in terms of the logistics of that, is there a bit of walking to be done, and what should people, I suppose, decent attire and wear and that kind of stuff, what they might feel comfortable in?
Yes, Michael. It will. I'd say it's a short walk. It's a 1 kilometer in total. People will walk from the car park until they get back to their car. Um, Again, it'll be an approximately about an hour and a half to do all of the stops around and get back to the yard area. It is a field. It's along a marked route. There's nobody going to get lost or lose some of the kids along the way. We hope anyway.
Always good.
But look, the long-term forecast is actually not that bad for next Wednesday. But appropriate gear, I suppose. Good walking shoes or a stiff pair of runners or something like that on the day. And if it ends up a wet night, naturally a pair of Wellingtons would be more appropriate and a raincoat. But nothing
We'll
too
be hopeful that
taxing.
doesn't happen anyway, John. In general sense, John, do people have to register in advance?
Yes, Michael. We would like people to register in advance. To do that, if they Google a summer's evening farm walk, there's an emphasis on Don's surname Somers, but even I've Googled it myself, a summer's evening farm walk. Or if they go to www.chagas.events, it's listed there for the day. Um, we're also on social media on Instagram and Facebook under
Okay.
Chagas as well. So there's plenty of people. Just in relation to the registration, it's literally just for numbers, but we will have some refreshments at the end of the event, and it is important that we have a handle on we don't want anybody disappointed.
And Don, can I go back and circle back around to, you mentioned that you're going to have a sprayer doing a bit of work on in grassland on docks, and I think you have invested quite heavily in a new sprayer, and it's got all the bells and whistles and everything on it. You might tell us just a little bit about that.
Yeah, so with the help of a TAMS grant, I upgraded my sprayer this year. So I was using a mounted sprayer and I've moved up to a trail sprayer, which has a bigger water tank and a wider boom. And the biggest benefit of the bigger tank was I felt I was compromising the water rates I was using a bit, and therefore not maybe getting as good a coverage as possible. When you have a limited capacity to carry water, the temptation is to reduce the water you're using. So I would have been using
Sure.
probably 150 litres per hectare typically, whereas now, excuse me, I'm using minimum 200, 250. I was spraying my beans there this morning and I upped the rate to 300 litres per hectare because I have the extra tank capacity and the more water I use, the better coverage I get. And then there's a lot of technology on on the sprayer, so it has individual nozzle control, and it can actually change the nozzles on the move. So I'm benefiting from something called curve compensation. So as the sprayer goes around the curve, it's increasing the rate on the outer part of the boom that's traveling much faster and reducing the rate on the inside of the boom, which is traveling much slower. And my thinking behind that was if I'm going around a curve, so my main tram lines are in straight lines, but pretty much none of my headlands are straight, they're all curved. So as the outer part of the boom speeds up going around the curve, I'm under applying pesticides, particularly herbicides. And the fear is that if I under apply there, I could be developing a resistant weed problem in the future. So by having that technology, you know, I'm not under applying pesticides anywhere with the fear of building up resistance. And another benefit of the individual nozzle control is it gave me the ability to try some spot spraying of weeds in my crops this year, um,
Okay.
which was we won't say it was an easy process. It took a bit of time and a bit of effort and a lot of patience to get that going, but we did get it going, and that's why it should be interesting maybe for the farmers on land farmers just to see where the different technologies and the use of AI have come together to give us the ability to do that. And where I have tried it, so I was trying to spot spray wild oats in my beans, and it meant I only sprayed 2% of the field. So 98% of the field was left untreated because there were only small numbers. I think in the total in the 25-acre fields, I was able to get a figure of 11,311 wild oats in that field, which sounds like an awful lot, but over 25 acres, it's a tiny amount. It
Sure.
represented 2% of the field. So there was massive potential there, both to save money and to reduce the amount of pesticides being used. So, it's kind of an exciting emerging technology.
Explain to me, Don, the process of figuring that out, that where to apply and where not to apply.
The system I'm using is from a company called CultiWise, and rather than having expensive cameras mounted all over the sprayer, there's a camera mounted to a drone, and I bring the drone to the field. My fields are already mapped and stored on the system, so I bring it to the field. I set the drone off. It flies a flight path over the field that is determined by what I want to spot. So if I want to spot, say, weeds, it flies at a lower altitude. If I just want to scan the crop to measure the biomass, I can fly much higher, but it flies over the field. It takes a number of images, like I think there could have been 1,600 images with a special camera. I upload those images onto the website. I send some photographs then of the weeds I wish to detect, and using AI, they were able to pick out those weeds when they put all the photographs down and scanned for the particular weeds I showed them. They were able to give me little dots on a map which represented the weeds. I put that on a memory stick. I put the memory stick into the control box of the sprayer. And as I drove through the field then, sorry, I should mention the drone has RTK GPS signal, so it's a fixed point, and the sprayer also has that. So it just switched on the nozzle. I created a buffer so it came on a little bit earlier and went off a little bit later to make sure I didn't miss it. But it spot sprayed those weeds then. Now, I am making that sound very simple. In reality, it was a lot more difficult than that because this is a new technology. And I was probably the biggest problem where I tried to fly a field once and I got the altitude wrong. I tried to fly another field and there was trees in the way. But it's because it's in the early days, there was a few of these obstacles that had to be overcome. I can't really blame the technology. A lot of the time it was me. But like I said, with some help and some guidance and some patience, we got there in the end. And so far, so good. I can't say for definite because it hasn't been sprayed long enough, but it seemed to be hitting the targets that were there. And we'll have to just wait and see if it works. But it is an exciting new technology.
And from your knowledge of the field, where the wild oats were you fairly confident that the AI generated maps were in or around right?
Yeah, I'd be confident they were right. The only thing I can't say for definite is did we detect them all? And the main reason for that is the crop had probably developed more than I would have liked to have by the time I got the final map. I tried flying it in previous days, but for various reasons, mainly me, it didn't complete the flight. So in that time in between, we got some rain, beans took off, and they grew a lot in the space of a couple of days. So I can't say with 100% confidence we got all the weeds, but by probably flying 3 or 4 days earlier, I could have increased that accuracy, or increased that amount. But when I went into the field, the dots on the map did represent where I could see the
Okay.
wild oats in the crop, and historically where I know there would have been wild oats in that field where there was maybe a bigger population of them, that all did tally, but a lot of it comes down to how accurately I have put the dimensions and the distance from the receiver into the boom. That all seemed to be working. But like I said, only time will tell if it was a success. But it seems to have been
Okay.
so far.
Well, sure, look, people can hear more about that, and you'll be given the ins and outs and ups and downs and goods and bads, if you like, and you'll have a better idea of how well it worked probably this time next week anyway in terms of the wild oats.
People will be able to see it in action. So we have flown the drone over the field where the cars are parking, and there will be a demonstration area where they'll be able to see the docks in the grass field and see the sprayer switching on to hit each individual plant. And in that field, I think it was like 95% of the field is untreated. So even allowing for buffers and everything else, way over 90% of the field needs to be untreated. So a 90% saving in the cost of the chemical.
Fantastic result, and obviously excellent IPM in that sense as well. Don, one last question for you there around you were particularly marked out in terms of the award you were given for the water quality, and I think it'll be explaining on the day that that your local river has increased its status, if you like. It's gone up to good or something, I think. Anyways, it's better than it used to be, at least. Anyways, but you're also planning to put in something around the farmyard as well.
Yeah, so as part of the EIP, the Farming for Water EIP, I have been approved for a couple of measures around the yard, plus a couple of more measures on the whole farm. So the main one to do with the yard, which people will be able to see on the day now, it is still a work in progress. We literally poured some of the concrete there this morning. So traditionally, excuse me, the runoff off the yard would have just gone into an open drain and into a kind of a small pond that's on the farm. That's just the way it was. So in order to rectify that issue, I have poured new concrete in the yard, which all drains into a central point. And at that central point, we're installing a settlement tank. So if I say washing machine or any soiled water off the yard, that all goes into the settlement tank. The larger particles will be able to settle and be removed. And the water with the larger particles removed will overflow and go into a willow bed system. And that'll be a number of it'll be a tiered system where the water will overflow and it'll trickle down along into the other sections, and the willows should remove any unused nutrients. And that should vastly improve the runoff off the yard and any washings from machinery that goes into that particular water body. And it's just rectifying a problem that has been there for generations. I suppose we didn't really give enough thought to that in the past, but now that we're aware of the problem, we're trying to do something about it. And EIP funding has made it a lot easier to tackle that. There's a couple of other measures I'm doing, like the cover cropping, and we're predominantly a winter cereals farm, so the short-term cover cropping that comes in under the EIP suits me very well, more so than the overwintered cover crops because we sow less spring crops. I've also installed some grass margins, which will be able to be seen at the open day as well. We can't apply pesticides or fertilizers within 3 meters of a body that could carry water. So if you can't apply pesticides or fertilizer, there's no point in trying to farm it, as far as I can see. So through the IP, we can get paid to install a grass margin. We've sold Timothy and Cocksfoot, which are very good at suppressing weeds, and very good at suppressing the likes of bromes that are coming out of the ditches anyway. So we're getting some help with from an IPM point of view in controlling those problematic grass weeds. And we're taking a part of the field that's not really going to be productive and getting a small payment, but a payment that helps to control that. I also have some land that's not ideally suited to tillage, and on some of that, I'm putting in a 1 hectare native woodland, which I battled with this land trying to produce on it. It's not producing a profit, and the 1 hectare of native woodland would be basically a guaranteed income for a couple of years that's not weather dependent. And things like those EIP payments, they're all very welcome in tillage because it's so volatile to prices of what we're producing and the prices of our inputs going up and down. And then there's the weather, and to have those payments, whether they're the cover crops or the grass margins or the native woodland, it's a guaranteed income at the end of the year.
Okay, helps it a little bit. John, just the last question for you, just to bring you in. You know Don's farm really well from the outside and looking in, I suppose. What is maybe just the one big sustainability practice that you are recommending people keep an eye out for as they are walking around Don's farm next week?
Oh, that's quite a difficult one
I'm going to nail it to one, though, John.
to nail it down to one. I suppose the most important thing for me, and when working on Don's farm, is his planning and attention to detail. And as you've heard there already, with his use of technology and the journey he is, even with the new sprayer, and from an IPM and water quality point of view. But we will be doing a practical demonstration on the low carbon grain that's coming off Don's farm, and I suppose that to me is the ultimate end goal with any tillage farms, and tying that in then with on the farm walk, there'll be an abundance of wildlife, hedgerows. We'll be talking about the water quality, and we have demonstrations there of the water quality and the wildlife that's in the water on display as well. So again, he's planning and attention to detail for both the environment and his pocket, I suppose, is the key.
And Don, I'm going to ask you a similar question. You don't notice your planning and attention to detail, but everybody certainly will on the day. But is there anything in particular that you would be particularly happy if people left your farm with that kind of a message in their head?
My biggest hope for the day is that that people, I'm not going to claim to be a perfect farmer or have the perfect farm. It's far from it, but that, I think the public perception is that, a modern commercial farm is all these big, massive fields that are polluted with chemicals, be it pesticides and fertilizers, and there's no biodiversity. My hope is that the members of the public that attend on the day will see that it's actually far from that we have loads of hedgerows, loads of biodiversity. It was John that actually pointed out that we should have a minute silence for nature, because if you're standing in the field and stop for a minute and listen, all you can hear are
birds,
all different species of birds singing. You can hear the buzz of all the different insects. If you take a look around, you don't actually see fields. All you can see are trees, mature hedgerows, and nature. The fields are just little pockets in between. So my hope is that the members of the public that come, they take away a different perception of what a modern farm is like. They see that farmers actually do work hand in hand with nature and are doing a lot to improve the environment and improve nature. And I hope that the farmers that are in attendance, or people who work in the farming industry, will recognise a lot of the things on my farm in their own farm, and maybe feel a bit better going home that, I'm not a standout farmer above anyone else. Most farmers are doing a lot of the things I'm doing anyway, but that they feel a bit better about what they're doing on their farm. And everyone just has a little bit more positivity about farming and the impact farming has on the environment.
Well, thanks very much, Don. And I'm, for one, very much looking forward to the evening, and hopefully we'll get lots of people down there to join you. Don and John, thanks very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Michael. Looking forward to seeing you there.
So that's it for this episode, and thanks to Don and John for joining me on the show. There is a link to the event and the registration page in the show notes or on teagasc.ie. So finally, if you enjoyed the podcast, then recommend it to a friend or colleague, and as always, rate, review and follow on Apple or Spotify so you never miss an episode. And for more information, go to teagasc.ie. I'm Michael Hennessy, thanks for listening. I'll be back next week with more tillage news and advice.